I have a challenge for you, and I didn't mean to do this to you during Women's History Month, but I think you're capable.
I'm afraid.
You should be. I want to know if you could try to go, in this time already of like restraint and denial, if you could go a month without seltzer.
Allison,
Can
and
you?
oh God, this is really hard. I don't really know what to say.
I want you to try for me. We're standing on this like beautiful hilltop. Like I'm making one simple proposal to you.
Oh God.
I can't. I can't. I've tried it and I've failed.
Why does everyone expect
it?
Welcome, everyone, to American Girls, the podcast where we're reliving the American Girls series book by book. And welcome to our Patreon episode where we're reviewing and reading and talking about things that we think fit into the world of this podcast. I'm Mary.
And I'm Allison.
And today we've gathered to discuss a very important piece. In some ways, people might say it's an appropriate description of us.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm over-prepared, under-prepared. I have pages of notes. I feel like I've been training for this since 1994. What are we talking about?
We are talking about Little Women.
Yeah.
And the Alcotts. There's so much to get to. You have been prepping for this like the AP exam, which will likely not take place this year.
Oh, here's the thing. This episode will be approximately 1 hour. What's weird about this hour is that compared to the rest of the time I've spent talking about Little Women, this is just recorded. That's the only difference.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's safe to say that we've both been lifelong fans of Little Women, the book, and the film adaptations. I mean, obviously we'll get into the Winona Ryder of it all. But, we both also have a deep interest in Louisa May Alcott, her family, and their weird forays into utopian communities, all kinds of stuff. So we've sort of given ourselves the opportunity to talk about really whatever we want in this world. So we're going to get into the Alcotts. We're going to get into the Bronson Alcott of it all. We've been itching to go here on this show for a long time. We're finally doing it. Allison has a lot of notes. And then we're going to get into Little Women adaptations, whether or not the book itself is an adaptation of the Alcott's lives. We're going to talk about different film adaptations. I read a recent graphic novel adaptation. And really just, we'll open the floor, Allison. I feel like it's all on the table on this episode.
So the first thing we're going to actually talk about is the woman a lot of people are now calling Comrade Britney Spears, or just Comrade Spears, depending on, your context.
Correct.
So as listeners of this show should be well aware, Britney Spears has been living under a conservatorship.
Correct.
Here's what that means. She works a lot, she has no control over her money, and her civil liberties are curtailed because of a perception of a disability. So disability activists are rallying behind Britney Spears because she is saying that she is doing a full work stoppage until her rights are restored. The hero we need, maybe if not the hero we deserve.
In many ways, I think we've always known that capitalism is toxic.
Stop. So here's the thing. Here's the thing. When you look at Britney Spears, we should have seen this coming, because Louisa May Alcott basically lived under the thumb of her father, Bronson Alcott. Ooh. If you came here to redeem him,
get out.
We're not doing that. I tried, like, to quote, Joe from a few minutes ago. I tried. I can't. I won't. I read hundreds and hundreds of pages of their life story. If you're deeply invested in making him a hero, you can turn this off right now.
This isn't really the show for you. And we might say, instead of quoting Joe, we might quote JoJo and say leave, get out, etc.
Right now.
Right now.
No, honestly, we are here for dissent, unlike, Bronson Alcott, but there's a really critical parallel, and we'll talk about this. Part of where Little Women comes from as a text is the family's great financial need. Louisa May Alcott really being the moneymaker of the Alcott family, and particularly for her father, who sort of lost his popularity at various times, really wasn't able to sustain himself or his family financially, very much like Mr. Spears.
Extremely like Mr. Spears. And it's kind of like, how is it that you can navigate wanting to voluntarily opt into utopian visions of what society might be like and exploring and experimenting with that, while at the same time wanting to preserve your own authority and, you know, constantly pointing to a crisis within your own family, which you think is manifested in distrust of the patriarch? Like, you can't have it both ways. You can't say, let's reimagine society and I should still be in charge because I'm the dad. You know, and like Britney Spears was in a utopian community called the Mickey Mouse Club. I'm just saying, like, that early activity, that professional gig, put her in a financial situation where her dad was no longer the authority figure or the main source of income. If you locate power with who has the money, it wasn't the dad. So there's a lot of parallels.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I should not interrupt with this at all. Is Justin Timberlake the Emerson of our time? Or is he Hawthorne?
I actually think he's Thoreau, and hear me out on this.
Oh my, that was gonna actually, okay. Like, I'm really not just saying this. That was gonna be my first, like, punt.
Really?
No, really, but I get in my head because it's thorough, like the word.
Yep.
And not Thoreau, but I've been so trained to say Thoreau. So Concord area people right now are like, it's Thoreau.
So you're correcting me? Is that what's happening?
No, I'm like self-correcting
I
because
see.
It's like how it's actually Quincy, not Quincy.
I see.
But
I'm not like Britney Spears. I don't really want to be policed for my appearance or my speech, but I do respect you. Thank you for giving me that context. But I mean, like, he's thorough, not Thoreau. Yes. In the sense that he just posted. Now, we're in the midst of a pandemic. It's not a joke. People are dying. People are staying inside, practicing social distancing. Justin Timberlake and wife have escaped to the mountains in the most in one of the most privileged depictions of social distancing I've seen. And he posted this photo of them all like in a abandoned, like, snowy mountain valley, and it's like, oh, we're just taking social distancing in the mountains, we're out here in nature alone, like, hope everyone stays safe, please support these charities. That's all I'm prepared to do. Meanwhile, Britney Spears is over here on the front lines. But it kind of reminds me of Thoreau, because if you've read Walden Pine and felt moved by it, like, I don't want to take that from you, but just know, and this is what changed things for me, Emerson lived nearby. He would leave the woods during this, like, supposed one-man, like, communing with nature and go have ice cream at Emerson's house, and his sister did his laundry. So I'm sorry, this is sort of like philosophy major in college who's like, basically make me a sandwich and I'll explain to you what you can't possibly understand about Plato. It's like, time out. I don't need it.
I think the best con that he committed was not living in the cabin, but the subsequent generations of people who've decided that this was brave. I actually think he fully knew well that what he was doing was a pretty modest achievement for its time. Like, I think he's more interesting in the frame of, you know, refusing to pay taxes and, like, thinking critically about what civil disobedience might mean. I don't really think, like, he even had a sense that what he was doing was particularly staggering, because he knew exactly where all of his food, laundry, sustenance came from. I also have had, like, beautiful moments. Like, I love Walden Pond. I think it's a magical place to spend time. And if you're not local to the New England area, just looking it up on Google Maps, it's a stunning landscape. And I don't blame him. I also always go back to, like, this is one of my party facts, like, the fact that he drew an income from a pencil factory. I love that.
It's like, to me, he's also sort of like a 19th century tiny house enthusiast, where he's like, guys, you wouldn't possibly understand this, but I'm going to reject my worldly possessions. I'm going to keep my income streams, my multiple income streams, and my access to food, shelter, etc. But I'm going to do this performance of, you know, modesty and communing with nature. I agree, it's a beautiful place. I love that place, but I'm sort of put off by people with some level of privilege performing something that because of life circumstances is not a performance for a lot of people. It's their only
Mm.
option. So to me, there's just a lot that puts me off. I agree with you. I think his conscientious objector activities are the most interesting facet of his kind of public life. And I do encourage people to check out those writings. But Walden has never been my scene. And you can feel free to change my mind, people listening to this show. It probably won't happen. I'd rather go out for ice cream with you and talk about literally anything else, which is probably what Thoreau did. But
Yeah.
just to say, I can't believe I brought Justin Timberlake up on this show, and really we should be celebrating Queen Britney. And I also want to celebrate, do you want to say something else about Britney before I bring up another hero?
I was just gonna say, I fully have internalized that she's Comrade Spears now. No, I have. Like, I have
You've
actually
just
like
done
taken
that.
that as part of my lexicon. And I think it's actually not shocking that someone who's been through the life that she has come out with this kind of labor position.
Yep.
Because say what you will, like that woman works very hard. And the fact that
Yes.
she can't do almost anything without her father, I think like one of the things that you can do with privilege is shine a light on something else. And I think honestly, unintentionally, this has given disability activists a capacity to say, like, the way that people were thrown into asylums 200 years ago, and frankly, far more recently, this is what's happening to her with financial straitjacket. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's actually great that she's using herself to advance that.
I agree. I feel like you could probably do a really interesting project drawing a line from Nellie Bly's 10 Days in a Madhouse to Britney Spears' Instagram.
Yeah, you could.
I mean, I don't have the bandwidth to do that right now, but I would love to see that done. So if anyone's willing, like, please reach out. But it's interesting, too, to think about, of course, how the media presentations of all this are gendered, because you look at someone like Justin Bieber, who's also been pretty candid about having some mental health struggles and addiction struggles and God knows what else. There is no public sense that he should be put into a conservatorship when he's had just as many, if not more, public meltdowns and instances that people point to and say, aha, this is why this person can't be
Mm.
independent and in control of their full public embodiment and financial power and so on. There's no earthly reason like why, from where I stand, you could people point have so built up that around her who are critical of her, when so many men in equal or comparable public positions are allowed to behave in the same way, and it's celebrated as like, oh, that's just their eccentricity, or that's sort of like their interesting behavior. Like, look at Kanye.
Yeah. I honestly believe that one of the lessons of Louisa May Alcott's life, and there are many, is the way that as a woman in a specific way in her time period, but also in a more universal way, the sort of mistakes, I want to put it that way, of men around her have these shocking ripple effects into her and other people's lives. Like, she is surrounded by people who are both brilliant and impractical, right? They're impassioned, but they're not always strategic. And I do think part of why Little Women is such a gift is if she had been able to write as she truly wanted to, we would never have it. And that's such like a strange thing to say, but I also think some of the music that's come out of people like Britney Spears, or even you look at the way Kesha was treated by Dr. Luke, her hits all came out of that period. And it's a strange thing to sit with, of like, these people who've created things that we love did it under duress and didn't want to.
Yeah, it's a really tough thing to sit with, and you kind of have to wonder. We can never recover like the interiority of Louisa May Alcott, but how she tried to navigate that,
Mm.
as she accrued more and more success.
And she says very explicitly, like, she knew Emerson, she knew Hawthorne, she knew Thoreau, she knew all of these people. And like, she has in her documents, no one is making them write a women's story, or no one is making them write a family story. But I think a lot about like who I'm reading and how that's informing the way I see the world. And I spent a lot of my college years like reading books that were classics, in like air quotes. And now it's like I have such a different experience when I'm reading a book by someone whose life experience is more similar to mine. And that can come from a variety of reasons or identities. But the power of being told, like, no, this book is really important, and it's written by a person who shares some aspect of your embodied experience,
Mm-hmm.
versus being told Chaucer is important, You don't connect. Maybe you do connect with it, but like not feeling the connection and being like, oh, like I'm inadequate because I don't connect to this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot going on with that where it's kind of like, I think there's been a shift in how we talk about the relationship to the author to the text. So you can either think like the author's dead and I'm just interpreting this text like on its own as an island, or you bring the author and their experiences into it. And in the past 50 years or so, we've included conversations around authors' lives that previously were sort of verboten or not of interest. So you can see this in Louisa May Alcott as well. Like, we actually talk about her sexuality when we talk about Louisa May Alcott. That did not happen for the past, I don't know, like I would say people have only been speaking about that for the past, 30, 40 years maybe, hinting at it.
Yeah, and I think, house museums are another great place where you can say on the one hand, like people weren't talking about sex or sexuality. They were just only talking about it in one way.
Right. Yeah.
So like there's plenty of conversation around people of this set about their like heterosexual affairs, about them raising families, about the decision to get married between a man and a woman, and that huge gap missing of other people's lives, right? Like in terms of Louisa May Alcott, like her status as a single woman, that's a story. Her status possibly as a queer woman is also a story.
Right. And I mean, speaking to what you just said, like I relate to that too so much as a reader, that if I read a book that's by a queer person or involves queer characters, I feel so much more invested in it, even if I don't think the quality is that great. It's like, oh, wow, like here's, someone I can relate to on the page in a way that, in a lot of spaces I can't. Like, I know people love Hallmark Christmas movies. My mom has them going now 24/7 because of they're airing them now because of the pandemic. And, like, I can't relate to that. I've never saved Christmas. I mean, these movies aren't about me, but yeah, so I think there is a lot with that does make it interesting. And I think too, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention, and I'm sure we'll get into this, the ways that, the more things change, the more they stay the same, and not to be lulled into ideas of narratives of progress. When you look at someone like Greta Gerwig as a creator, as an artist, the ways that even in writing this beautiful adaptation of the book and making this gorgeous film, she was not lauded in the ways that I truly think she deserved. And I think it's impossible to say it was for any reason but the fact that she's a woman.
I also think, I think we're fortunate to have a lot of people in our lives who wouldn't say out loud, like, that's not for me because I'm a man. But I think that's an unstated assumption of why a lot of people felt it wasn't for them or simply wasn't of interest to them. And I think that's, again, part of what makes someone like Louisa May Alcott a brilliant writer. There's a dialectic in her life, by which I mean her survival depends on being able to read and make predictions about men's behavior.
Yep.
The men in her life don't really have to do the same because it doesn't matter to them, right?
Yeah.
So the stakes are very different. The dialectic is very different. For Louisa May Alcott, like being a very good study of people is essential to her survival. And so I think that's why her characters bleed through. I was really taken aback by the Gerwig adaptation. Like, I kind of went in with like a cage around my brain and heart where I was like, nothing replaces 1994. And I was so shocked by how relevant it felt. I was so shocked that it reached me because I really wasn't prepared and was almost like against that happening. Like I didn't think I would feel the way that I did. And I feel like people now, like they posted grilled cheese and they're like, I feel so seen. And it doesn't mean anything. But I think part of what like shocked me about this film is like, I went with a big group of people and like all of us saw ourselves in it in different ways. And that kind of shocked me. Like I actually really wasn't expecting it to feel as much resonance as it did.
Yeah, I think I had a similar experience. I went to a theater that had people, like mostly women, as you're saying, of all different age groups in it. And everyone was crying at several points. Like you could audibly hear people sobbing during this movie. And I went in like you. I'm a Winona Ryder stan for the ages. I will not take any critique of her performances. Like I'm just not open to it. But to me, this adaptation is so amazing because she really does create something new. Like the editing choice that she makes to kind of do like flash forward, flash back, and so on to kind of help you understand like why everyone made decisions that they did. I think she does a really powerful thing of like demonstrating what some would call choice feminism, of like, for example, Meg choosing to get married and to like choose domesticity as a feminist act, you would say, historically a feminist act, and having to explain that to Joe and having Joe not understand that, because for Joe, like, seemingly the only act is to be independent and not be tied down and so on. But it was really emotional. I thought it was amazing. I also think the casting was really interesting because I think it opens up queer possibilities that the other adaptations don't. Like, casting Timothée Chalamet as Laurie, that's a move.
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah, absolutely.
And to me, like, seeing his proposal scene with Joe, I read that as like a very queer desire moment. And there's also a moment previous to that when Joe cuts her hair to sell it so that Marmee can go to the father. Timothée Chalamet does this really smart thing. I don't know if he was told to do this, but he ruffles his hands through Joe's short hair in a way that it's like expressing like physical attraction or admiration, in a way that also, for the time, to reach out and touch somebody's hair between men and women was like, not like, there's so much emphasis, especially for someone of his class and breeding, on decorum, that the fact that he felt comfortable to just reach out and like touch Joe's like really roughly cut hair, to me, I read that moment as like, what's interesting about moments of queerness in film or anything is like, you can read it into it if you want or not. It's like a choose your own adventure. So I saw that moment and thought, this is a moment of queerness. But I'm sure like so many other people watched that movie and were just like, oh, maybe Laurie's trying to make Joe feel better about getting a bad haircut, etc.
No, and I think, like, to put a maybe just like sharper point on it, in that scene, the other women's reaction is horror because she looks boyish,
Right.
and he's into it.
He's
like,
into
am
it.
I being too blunt?
No,
like,
I think that's
what they're
absolutely
showing.
true. And I think also the costuming is somewhat, his casting and the costuming allows you to also see like a feminization of Laurie. So you have both like that almost like male to male desire in that scene, but then in a lot of other scenes, it's sort of like there's this feminine kind of energy where between them, where it's like, who's like rivalry, who's going to be the dominant person in this relationship, and it's Joe. But yeah, there was a lot there that's obviously something you've never seen. I've never seen in any other Little Women adaptation that I've seen.
No, and I think that's what made the scene where she rejects him on the hilltop, right? And she says, I can't. I think what's so interesting about that scene is, for a lot of reasons, for her time period, Laurie is probably the best like social get that she could ever dream of, right?
100%.
As a woman from a poor family, like, take personality, take everything out, like her birth order, like all these different things, like the way that she comes in, and her saying I can't, I think is so interesting, because it's not like I won't, it's not that I don't want to. I think that scene was really powerful for a lot of people, because she's like, no, I can't get there. Like, it is actually impossible for me to feel this way for you. And I think it's her own frustration with herself of like, why can't I just make this work?
And that's it. I think that's such a human moment, in a way that comparable scenes in other classic fiction, I think, is also moving, but it's just different. So like for me, that scene recalls Elizabeth Bennet refusing Mr. Darcy the first time he proposes, where, like you're saying, he would be a massive get for someone who's a second born daughter in a family of middling privilege. And she basically refuses him and is like, you're rude. You think you're going to insult me and that's going to convince me to marry you. Like, it's not. She's actively sort of hostile to him and pulls no punches. So that's kind of shocking. But it's, to me, more tragic and heartbreaking for Joe in this scene to say, I can't, because you feel that frustration, like you're saying, of like, I realize what this would mean to my family. Like, in a very unselfish way, I realize what this would mean to my family. It would not just change my life, it would change everybody's life. And I can't get there. Like, it's a very human moment. You can kind of feel your way into it as an audience member. So, I mean, the acting is gorgeous. I mean, I think that casting of Laurie really threw me at first, but I think it works really well. Do we want to talk about Amy?
Yeah, I mean, I want Florence Pugh to have a moment, like, as much as anyone, right? Like, I want that to happen. I think for a lot of people, this redeemed the Amy character, and that will just never ever happen for me. So there's like no risk. I'm just being honest, like that will never happen. She will just never be a favorite for me. This film challenged my views on Beth in ways that I'm not really prepared to talk about yet, although I will. Um, for me, like this film did not redeem Amy, it just made her more human. And I think for some people, maybe that distinction doesn't matter, but for me, it does. Like this Amy is ultimately more likable. I think you hate her a lot less over the course of the film. But for me, this isn't about redeeming Amy, but everyone kind of agreeing to forgive some aspects of her and then like accepting her and showing her as a full human. I think
Yeah.
that's the difference.
I think the Frances Pugh did a wonderful job acting the part of Amy. There was dialogue that did the most work any human being could do to redeem the character of Amy. Thinking most especially of her scene with Laurie where she explains that marriage is a contract
Yeah.
and, you know, the realities of that for her life and so on. I'm with you where it's just sort of like, I get rationally why it makes sense why people say this has redeemed Amy. And if there was ever going to be a redeeming depiction of Amy, this was it. I just don't find her compelling as a character. And I think her sins against Joe are too grave, and she gets out of all of them scot-free in a way that I can't. And maybe it's like, this is my middle child jumping out where I can't handle, like, yeah, I just can't handle, like, what happens in this book where Amy sort of misbehaves and kind of fails up, so to speak.
Yeah.
And this might be a controversial comment, but I just feel like she kind of fails up, and there's really no moment in the book or in the film where she can sort of go to Joe and say like, hey, I get it. Like, this was your dream to go to Europe and I get your dream. And now I get your husband, which Joe doesn't care about. But also, like, burning the book, I will never get over burning that story. To me, that
No.
was so haunting. Because to me, the greatest love story in that book is between Joe and her writing. And that's why the end scene, I was crying because it's so powerful to end not on her wedding or even on her reunion with Professor Bear, which I love that Greta Gerwig lets you imagine that that could be fantasy or real. But the thing
Yes.
we know is real is that the book is being created and put out into the world. There's all these metaphors in publishing about giving birth to your work and so on. And I love that the reproductive requirement or role that Joe has made for herself is not to become a mother and get married and perform domesticity, which the book establishes, I think, and the movie does really well as an equally valid choice. But instead, it's like, no, she created this book, and now we get to see it go out in the world. It's so emotional.
So I think one of the differences between her and Amy, because Joe ultimately gets that and Amy doesn't, like her art career stalls, and much like in some ways like the person on whom she's based, as well as Bronson Alcott, her greatest hope after a certain point is to be a teacher, which is
Yeah.
not to disparage teaching, but to say like she imagines herself as a world traveling artist. I think the scene where that actress won people over is when she's in the studio and she has the apron on and she's working. And Lori comes in, and I feel like this is gendered, and I think it's a universal experience, but I think it's a particular thing that happens when you're a woman who has some modicum of talent. You do something that you're very proud of or that you think is very good. And again, like I'm also making this gendered, but all it takes is for like a certain kind of man to ruin it. And to me, I think where that actress won over like the hearts and minds of the Little Women audience was she's working, she's so proud of this thing. And he essentially asks her, in other words, almost like, do you think you're good at this? And for me, that was one of the hardest scenes to watch because I think like that acting was just so good, like all this self doubt. And he's basically saying, like, this whole life that you think you've built, like, really isn't worth very much. And he's trying to get revenge on her for her calling him out, being drunk at a party after Joe refuses him. But instead of like talking about a specific action, he's basically like, you're not very good. And I think that was like a galvanizing scene of like people rallying towards Amy in a way that I've never felt with the 94 Amy. Like I never got there with her.
Yeah, and I think what was really strong about that too, and about the character, just to give credit where credit's due, is like, what's really moving about that scene is her level of consciousness and
Mm.
self-awareness. Like, she knows exactly what she's choosing to marry someone that she doesn't love, because in that scene she's kind of saying, like, I'm going to marry this rich guy just because I know I have to, and I know why. But owning that choice and the tragedy of that choice, and then having to defend it to this guy who's never had to make that choice a day in his life and gets to literally show up drunk at a party and there's like no consequence at all. It's heartbreaking and tragic, even in this arc that's presented as like, wow, this person really gets a good ending in this book. So even when, like, I do not care about her love story with Laurie at all.
Yeah.
Because to me, I'm like, God, you have to be this insufferable, like, idiot who, like, will turn on you in a second, like, if he doesn't get his way. I mean, I hope he grows up, and maybe Beth's death is the thing that did that for him, but it remains to be seen. But it's interesting to think of those movies with that movie in conversation with Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which I know you haven't seen yet, but there is a similar scene where the subject is being painted so that the portrait can be sent to her future husband to see if he wants to marry her. And in a similar way, she needs to be married off to save the family financially. And the woman painting her has chosen never to get married so that she never has to give up her art, because being an artist is everything. But ultimately, too, she becomes a teacher because that's the only way she can survive as a woman. So it's like everyone involved has to sacrifice. This artist, even pursuing her career and her art, knows she'll never get the opportunity to do as big a like scale career as a man in her position and with her talent. And the woman she paints knows exactly what she's entering into. And it's not necessarily a win because it's not like a love marriage.
No, and I think part of that is I don't think Amy ever has the confidence that she had before after that discussion with Laurie. Like, I think part of why their relationship actually happens is like, she did imagine herself as like, I'm a person who's worthy of marrying a Fred Vaughn and I will use his money as I decide. And Laurie takes some of that away from her.
I think that's 100% true. And I also just need to say I did not need to see Mr. Murch in this film. Like, there's too much of him. Like, why is he here?
Never cared, still don't care. One of my challenges was sort of the beauty of Marmee in this film, because to me, Marmee has like a homespun vibe. And after Big Little Lies, I just cannot. No, I can't. I'm serious. Like, I cannot see that actress as anything other than. I keep wanting to call her Laura Linney, and I'm afraid that's wrong. It's Laura Dern.
Laura Dern.
This is a Who Weekly thing, like people who have like confusion over like these very similar actresses, and I have it. It's like car blindness.
I understand.
So with her particularly, I was like, I kind of can't get over how like stunning she is, and like even in a simple dress, like to me, she took up the scene. To me, where she earned like every dime plus probably more of her paycheck was based on like real words by Mrs. Alcott, the scene where she says, you know, like, I'm angry every single day of my life.
Mm-hmm.
That was so compelling and so well done. I was like, okay, I accept you, even though you're not Susan.
The one note I would give on an Oscar-winning performance who doesn't need a note from a hack who literally failed at my third grade play, and I won't relive that tragedy, although I'm forced to because Allison says the line I couldn't say all the time. There's this scene where Jo is, it's so heartbreaking, in the attic, and she's crying and she's like, I'm so lonely.
Yeah.
That was such a dark scene. But when she's basically saying like, I'm lonely, I don't have a connection, like I want a connection with somebody, I want this and that, I really thought Marmee would like reach out to her in that scene, like physically extend an arm, like come here, and instead she just stares at her, and I was like, this feels weird. But the scene where she says I'm angry every day did make up for everything.
I think that was very true to how they've conceptualized Alcott's experience of like, I think she lived in this family that was extraordinarily tight for really any time period. Like, they really do stick together through their entire lives. You know, she dies so close in time to her father, like basically gives up when he dies. At the same time, like, she's alone always.
Whew, yeah.
So I thought that was realistic in a way.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. It was so hard to watch. Like, I think I'm just reacting to how painful it was of a scene to witness. But, you know, all to say, I genuinely loved it. Meryl Streep as Aunt Marge.
A classic.
A classic. Great.
We haven't talked about like the elephant in the room, which for me is what I want to call the diminished capacities of Beth March in this film.
So you didn't feel like Beth March was given her due in this movie. You didn't think she was, because let's reframe. In 1994, that version, we get Claire Danes, scrunching her forehead to possibly an Oscar nomination that didn't arrive, but she did what she could. She wobbles her lips when she's about to cry better than like seemingly anyone on the planet. Like there is a Claire Danes face, like you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
But there was an emotional intelligence to her performance that also was matched by what we're meant to understand as her great musical talent. And she has a shyness, but I feel like it didn't come across that way in the film. Is that how you felt?
I feel like in the 94 version and other versions, Beth loves the piano partially because she doesn't have friends. Like it's a thing that she does. Like I don't really think of Beth as particularly like that good at instruments. And in this version, I felt like her talent at the piano went way up and her ability to do anything else went way down.
Yeah.
Like the scene where they're preparing to go into the carriages and she turns to the group and she says, like, I said hi to the horses. They seem nice.
Yeah.
That to me was hinting at like this is a person who actually isn't like functioning at an adult level. And that to me is not Beth March, but Anna has read more recently and is like, no, she's kind of not 100%.
I think there's she's infantilized in the book in a sense because, I mean, I, of course, have not discussed this with Anna, who has just read the book, and I have not, but I haven't read it in a while. But it seems as though, like, she's constantly playing with dolls and caring for dolls at maybe an age that we would find strange now. But also maybe not, because we also know, like, you have American Girl dolls that you are dressing and playing with. So it's like, I do think there is an infantilization of her in this adaptation, and I wonder if it reflects the book. And I'm wondering if what's happening in the book is, like, we can't have Beth do anything that feels like a transition to adulthood because we, like, the author already knows she's not going to get there. So in a way, it's sort of like a romanization of a character as they were, and leaning into the thing that defined them, which is childhood, as opposed to the thing that they would never have access to, which is even like, older adolescence or adulthood. I mean, that's a guess. I don't know.
I also just felt like no one was even pretending to try to build a future for Beth in this film in a way that was like more stark to me than it's ever been. Like, okay, let's like imagine that she might want some independence or might want like literally anything going on in her life. Charge the wealthy family next door for her to play the piano or have her start giving lessons or something. And in this film, I was kind of struck by like the distance seemed a lot bigger between her and the sisters.
Well, it's just weird because Amy is depicted as somewhat boy crazy or wanting to also be older than her years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having the youngest sister actively wanting to be older than her years and like going out to the opera, going out to the hangouts that are for like the older sisters with Lori, doing all the stuff that's kind of beyond whatever point she's at in time, it only serves to further emphasize that Beth doesn't actively want those same experiences. And that might not mean that anything's wrong with Beth, but it sort of positions her outside the life cycle trajectory of the other sisters who are all like leading into these age-appropriate transitions that they're trying to navigate, like Meg navigating sort of debutante balls and coming out and really practically thinking about what marriage will mean for her if she chooses it. Jo actively not wanting it and trying to figure out what her life will economically be like without it. And Amy basically saying, like, I want to be rich, fill in the blank, how do I make this happen, sort of. Yeah, it was a little bit underwhelming, I'll say that. Like, she just didn't stay with me. Like, nothing about that performance really stayed with me. So,
I know.
Unfortunately. Whereas with Claire Danes, like, I will never forget that death scene.
No.
Ever. Period.
No.
Wow. But, I mean, also it's kind of like this characterization was written knowing that Beth dies.
True.
You know, so it's kind of like you're framing everything knowing that she's like, maybe you don't build a future for her because you know she's not going to have one. R.I.P.
I know.
But that kind of gets back to Louisa May and like what inspired this book and like what's all going on with that. So I know you've done a lot of research. We'll circle back to adaptations, I hope, but I want to hear. I can't wait anymore about what you've been reading about Louisa and Bronson and all of it.
So I'm going to focus mostly on the Susan Cheever bio, which is called Louisa May Alcott, A Personal Biography, which
Okay.
I enjoyed very much. I'm going to give it 2 thumbs up. I'm just going to, let me just like put this out there. Eden's Outcasts is a massive tome by John Madison about Louisa May Alcott and her dad.
Okay.
It's very well researched.
Oh boy.
The thing is, like, everyone has a friend or friends where you're like, their relationship is really weird. And part of you thinks, like, do I want to pay to put a camera and mic on those people for 24 hours? But you don't for a reason. That's Louisa and Bronson. Do you know what I mean?
So it's like this is like too much for prime time. Like we should actually just leave this. This should be history that stays silenced.
Like, okay, so like very, very brief, like Louisa Bronson 101. Louisa May Alcott is one of 4 children. That is true. She has a mother. Like all of that track, like very similar. There are 2 vital properties out of the dozens that the family lived in. One is still restored and active today as Orchard House. That is not actually where the Alcott girls grew up with Bronson and Abba. The other is the Wayside. And that is actually where like the events of Little Women took place. What's deceptive about thinking of this family as having like a fixed and meaningful home is due to Bronson's financial difficulties. They did move actually dozens of times. When you read a full bio of the 2 of them, their less than a year stint at a failed commune in Harvard, Mass is like kind of not even the worst of it.
That's chilling. As someone who's been to Fruitlands, that utopian community that failed quickly, that is a remarkable place to go. I highly recommend visiting, particularly in nice weather because you can walk around the space. And they actually have a Shaker home you can go to because Shakers live nearby. They have an art museum. I almost got into an adult cradle first time I went there. I just need that experience. I need to know like what's going on with that. But you go into that house and it is a dark house. Like physically it's dark. I feel like psychically it's dark.
Yeah.
It didn't go well there, but the dad basically was like, listen, I have a lot of ideas. I'm putting them to work. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to live the way that I'm imagining. And I'm also going to bring my wife and kids along for the ride.
So the thing about Bronson Alcott, I kind of devised this little game for us to very briefly play so we can kind of get some more information about him out on the table for everybody.
Great.
I'm going to sketch like very brief scenes for you, and I want you to tell me whether they were a scheme of Bronson Alcott or a scammer from the aughts/now.
So like, is this okay, got it. Scam or Bronson?
Obviously, that's a Venn diagram. That's a perfect circle. But
fair enough.
So you want to start a school, and the impetus behind your school is this idea that children are actually wiser than adults, and that the children will basically do the teaching. Is this a modern Montessori scam gone way too far, or a belief of Bronson Alcott?
I think this is from Goop Lab.
It is by the one and only Bronson Alcott. He tried this several times.
Like, how young are the children that are allowed to teach?
So it's not so much that they are the instructors, but this like overriding belief that children are wiser than adults. And parents are like, we're not paying for that.
That's fair.
Okay, next concept. Full vegan retreat. No one is allowed to have sugar. Mm-hmm. No one is allowed to have processed foods.
Okay.
And you might not be able to wear shoes because it's not vegan. Bronson Alcott or modern day scam?
This really does feel like Goop Lab.
I know, and I think that's what makes it hard.
Is this like a... This feels like modern day. This feels like a Gwyneth Paltrow thing that she would highlight or like upsurge on Goop.
This is also Bronson Alcott.
Oh, God.
Okay, so the next one is you promise a partial nationwide. You promise a pretty big speaking tour. You haven't really thought about what you're going to talk about yet, so you just call it conversations.
Uh-huh.
Is this something that a scammer came up with for Instagram, or is this something that Bronson Alcott actually did for about 30 years.
Excuse me? This wasn't like a Caroline Calloway situation?
This was not Caroline Calloway. This was again Bronson
Wow.
Alcott. I think part of what we're learning is that Caroline and Bronson might be the same person.
Like, if we believe in, multiple lives, he came back wisely this time. Like, this time he was like, I'm going to be a scammer, but I'm actually going to profit this time. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God. Wow. That's wild.
Now, our last one is you're going to choose to say that you're committed to your work, but never actually hold down a day job, and you're going to live just off of your daughter's art. Is this the father of Britney Spears or the father of Louisa May Alcott?
Now, see, as someone who just read Open Book by Jessica Simpson, more on that later, Allison's rolling her eyes, this could easily be Joe Simpson.
Wow, okay, I love that you gave it a C. That was a trick answer because it's actually D, all of the above.
Whoa. Yes, it is. That's tragic.
So if you get a document-based question about the 19th century, I feel like we've done young people a service and prepared you to speak to this moment like way better than reading Walden ever could.
Don't do it. You know how people are offering their talents now on social media? Like, if you're homeschooling and you need someone to talk about XYZ, it's like, we just did that.
We did. I will tell you my favorite thing that I learned about Louisa May Alcott in the Cheever bio. We're done with Bronson now. He's no more airtime. When she had money and she had some time, she spent a period of time in New York City. Louisa May Alcott is like so a true crime girl. Like, I never thought of her this way. I knew that she wrote slashers. She wrote what they called blood and thunder stories, which were really dark, and everyone was like, stop, we don't want it. When she has money, she goes and she stays at a spa with a lot of hydrotherapy. Number one, I also love a hot tub. Number two, she gets tour guides to take her around, and she's like, I want to meet newsies. We all do. Also, that foretold Christian Bale's career. Just saying. Number three, she's like, take me to an asylum. And I'm like, are you sure it's kind of sad? And she's like, yep. After the asylum, she goes to the tombs and tours a prison. And she comes out and she's like, it's quite bad.
So she kind of like Charles Dickens her way around.
But I think it's very different from Dickens. Like, I think it came from a place of like truly wanting to understand and connect. And one of her tours was on Christmas Day, and she did do acts of service. I don't know that that's her love language. It probably had to be to survive in that household. But I kind of like appreciated this whole other side of her, because I think people picture this kind of like sad person in an attic writing. She was like genuinely very drawn to dark things in life and was told that that was unacceptable. And I think that's so relatable to women today.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think we're still policing what women are allowed to like and indulge in ways that are kind of shocking when you consider how long people have been publicly aware or like consciously aware that this is an issue, and saying like, you should raise your daughters to like anything, but then you're also telling them that, X cultural thing is for boys. So it's both sad, but also affirming to see that she could be inspirational in that part of life as well.
Speaking of boys, I have one last thing about her that I don't like to criticize writing just on its own. The thing about Susan Cheever is she was like, this book is not just a Louisa May Alcott bio. It's a cheat sheet on U.S. history. She's like, maybe you don't have time to read Howard Zinn. She's like, I got you.
I got you.
This is the top of one of the pages. She's talking about President Andrew Johnson, who's been in the headlines because of his impeachment trial.
Wow.
Over President Andrew Johnson's protests, Congress passed the 14th Amendment, guaranteeing due process and the rights of former slaves. 2 years later, President Johnson would be impeached by that same unruly Congress. Did Louisa May Alcott and her laddie become lovers?
What?
This is like, I understand that you could take any 3 random sentences of a book out of context. No one told her, like, segues are not just for getting around new cities. Like, segues are here to help
even Wikipedia
Susan.
has segues.
So she then continues. So Laddie is a famous and sort of Louisa May Alcott fandom. This is a man with whom she spent a few weeks and basically like ripped up any evidence in her diaries of what went on. but they maintained a correspondence for years afterwards. And she continues later, like, whether Alcott ever had a lover is a matter of debate. But I'm like, Susan, if we're going to talk 14th Amendment and impeachment, maybe let's give it more than 2 sentences or like not mention it.
That is absolutely shocking. I am sitting up in my seat. I can't believe this. My palms are sweating. This is wild.
Yeah.
This is absolutely wild. But it's like she's playing into the same crap that we're talking about, which is like, don't like point to gendered ways of understanding a person's life or what matters in a person's life and then be subject to them at the same time. Like, pick a lane, Susan. I hate when biographies of women get obsessed with when or if they lost their virginity, particularly 19th century women. It's like, who cares? And I'm sorry, where's this moment in your shock Andrew Jackson bios? Like, we don't have one, period.
So I will share with you another page. I would never mark the corners of a library book, but if I had, this caused like a big flap.
You don't mark up library pages?
My librarians could be listening. I don't know. I don't want to say.
Okay.
So this woman is herself the daughter of an author and is an author and is like very interested in those relationships. So page 47, you're not following along, but just like to cover my own tracks for legal purposes here.
Sure.
She asks, is this conflation of art and life now thought to be an important she says, yet this conflation of art and life is now thought to be an important aspect of studying any work of fiction. She's getting at this point you made of like, do we need to understand the author's world, which we think you do. Next sentence, no context, no preparation for this. Was Dickens a child molester?
Oh my God.
Was Scott Fitzgerald mean to Zelda?
What?
Yes.
How is that even a question?
These questions are part of the study of literature as it is today. Have we gone too far in trying to take great works of the imagination down to the detective work we have done on the lives of great writers? I'm going to say 2 words to that. Harvey Weinstein.
Oh my God.
2 more words. It matters.
It does matter. It does matter. And I think she's muddying the waters there in 500 different ways, but just to get at some obvious points, it is true that if you care about history, you should not be trying to solve a whodunit in the past and feel like you will definitively always be able to answer the question yes or no. That's not how history works. Is it also important to ask important questions of the past, even if you can't get the answer? Yes. Like, to just not muddy the waters in her point of speech. Like, if we weren't willing to ask those kind of questions without definitive proof, we would still be writing about Thomas Jefferson in a really particular way, and that would be a huge problem.
I think part of what's strange about that, and this book is a little bit older, like it's not a super recent book. I think what's maybe disingenuous about that is that's like actually her business. Like, her business is writing a biography around a person and a text, right. And it's like, that is actually what you're doing.
Wait a second. I'm getting fired up now. I think I've read a Susan Cheever bio.
Ooh, okay.
I have to look up her work. Scare quotes.
So, and I will say, I learned a ton from this book. I appreciated her perspective. I really liked reading about Alcott's final years caretaking for her niece. I thought that was fascinating.
She's written a lot of books.
Yeah, she has.
When did she have the time? She also wrote a book on sex addiction. So I'm just putting that out there. We could check that out. I read American Bloomsbury, Louisa May Alcott, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Margaret Fuller, Nathaniel Hawthorne, and Henry David Thoreau. Or I'm just going to really lean into it.
It's hard.
I'm trying. That's all I can say. But it's kind of like the calls coming from inside the house, Susan.
Yeah, it's so true.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, she's like, wow, these people are being so like irresponsible in their research. Like, this is crazy. What are we doing? And then she's like, anyway, like, we all know, like, Louisa and Laddie. It's like, what? And like, this person was a child molester. Ma'am, what are you doing?
So first of all, I've never heard that about Dickens, but I will also say probably the best thing I've ever read about Dickens that helped me to understand him. It was a biography of Dickens where every chapter was a different child of his. And it was like Dickens through the prism of that child's life. And like, spoiler, they all disappointed him. He couldn't stand any of them, basically. But
Damn.
it was a fascinating way to be like, number one, what was he like as a father and a person?
Mm.
And in 2 pages, you could be like, it was pretty bad, right? Like, he didn't
Yeah.
care for them very much. But it gave me this whole other understanding of like this person that taught a major part of the Anglophone world to care about poor people could not have cared less about his children.
Yeah.
And like, that's fascinating to me. And of course it matters.
It always matters. Oh my God, that's wild.
Sorry,
I'm like staring into space. I can't even believe this. That is so crazy.
I labeled that for like those following along. In my notes, I put page 188, reconstruction/bad writing. And then underneath it, I was like, there's a few other things I want to remember. The apple slump that nearly destroyed this family.
Oof.
The best thing that Louisa May Alcott maybe ever did was write a book called Moods, and no one is talking about that.
Wow.
Thank you.
You're just dropping a mic. I also love Hospital Sketches, and I know it's not your fave, but I did reread it before today, and it's like a collection of her newspaper columns that loosely fictionalized her real experience as a Civil War nurse in Georgetown in 1863. And then she did get typhoid fever, allegedly. This is like Susan Cheevers of the history of medicine who are like, I'm going to diagnose someone who was sick 200 years ago. I can do it. I have no access to them. I can't examine them, but I will figure this out. So there's been a lot of speculation that she had typhoid. She was treated with calomel. She had mercury poisoning, leading to the bags under her eyes that we've mentioned that we thought we had at different times. And
True.
then, of course, she dies relatively young from what some have now said is lupus, based on her description of her symptoms. It's a very interesting book. It's meant to be funny. I remember thinking it was really funny, and I reread it and was like I think some of this is lost on me, but it is a fascinating depiction of what life was like in a Civil War hospital, and like having to care for people who were also fighting for the Confederacy and the moral, like basically Bronson was like, I will die for my beliefs and I will never do anything to violate those, including letting my family starve in some situations. So for Louisa to be his daughter and be in a hospital, they're like, okay, you need to go bathe that Confederate soldier before he has an amputation. She was like, absolutely not. This violates my beliefs. But then ends up talking to him and not befriending him, but like sort of pointing to the messiness of that conflict and her role in it, but also like how nursing stands in as almost like this third gender that allowed women to have greater autonomy in their lives, at least during the war. In a weird aside that I did learn after this, she publishes this book with a particular publisher whose name I've forgotten. Doesn't matter. Walt Whitman, years later, goes to publish his own account of his nursing experience during the Civil War, and he writes to this same publisher, and he's like, listen, what I want to sell you is going to blow Hospital Sketches out of the water. He's like, it won't just be some Hospital Sketches. And it's like, please be quiet. There's room for all of us in the marketplace.
This book did mention that to be a nurse in that context, they were only taking women over a certain age. Like, you couldn't be too young to be like, quote, tempting. You had to dress a certain way, all these things. What I think is interesting, too, is like when you get invested enough to write a biography, you think you understand the fullness of that person. And there's a part where it talks about how people from basically her hometown, like her home life, fundraised money for some of the people that were part of the raid on Harper's Ferry, including John Brown. And Louisa May Alcott writes this really impassioned poem about John Brown. She's like very into him. And Susan Cheever kind of writes this off as like, this isn't really what she thought. Like, I don't have the exact quote in front of me. You know, like Brown was completely insane. And like, of course, Alcott didn't actually support this. And I think if you're willing to think of her as someone who goes to the tombs on vacation and has seen war up close, I think she actually is fine with it. I think that's what's interesting is like when a biographer says like, well, like this was part of it, but like this couldn't have really been what she thought. Like this was just for the market. And it's like, no, it kind of seems like she actually approved because her home community paid for it partially.
Yeah. I just think biography and like historical fiction focusing on a person, it's so fraught because you're so tempted, I imagine, to get into like mythos territory. Like this is going to also be my story and the person I'm writing about, and I'm going to become their like defense attorney and tell you what they meant to say and all of this stuff. And if people are interested in this, someone whose writing I really love is a woman named Hermione Lee, who is a scholar who's written a lot of biographies of British women writers in particular, but Virginia Woolf is the one I've read. And she has a book of essays about writing biographies, and it's called like Virginia Woolf's Nose or something like that. But talking about how people get really obsessed with a certain facet of a person, and it ends up becoming a more reflection of like the current conversation about them than about what they would have understood of their experience. And complicating all of this is like, how much of their experience can we really access? And to me, I always trust what people say. So if you can recover a diary or letters, you can at least start there and say these are their actual words. But then, of course, that gets muddied as well, because how often do we say something and mean another? So to me, it's like we will never recover the truth of the past, but I'm interested in what arguments or imaginings people can make of it. So I don't know if I'm interested in Susan Cheevers, but I'm curious.
I mean, one of her core arguments by the end is like direct quote, even Louisa May Alcott wanted to be Jo. Like that in some ways, Jo was a manifestation of who Louisa May Alcott didn't get to be.
Yeah.
Because of the circumstances of her life. And I think maybe that's why so many generations of people have been able to make and remake Jo in their image, because it's like her own creator. It was her aspiration, not her life. And she's very into like, she's like, I went on a tour of Orchard House and they got this and this wrong. And like, I'm not here for that.
I hate when
I'm not here for that. Because it's different interpretations. And people, I think, are fully aware when they go to a place like Orchard House that you're participating in a fantasy. You're participating in a fiction.
Of course. I also think it's interesting, too, that she was jealous of Jo in a sense, because I wonder if part of that jealousy was that Jo got to have privacy in a sense. Like she lived in the world of the books, and the character could go on and we could imagine have any number of lives after the life of the books are over. Whereas Louisa May Alcott as a child and as an adolescent had a certain kind of public performance, being the child of this somewhat notable person, living with the dire consequences of their choices, then has to deal with a lifetime of publicly performing as a famous author, which she didn't like. I remember reading once there was an anecdote that people would just come up to their front door and knock on the door and say, like, can I meet Louisa May Alcott? Is she here? And she took to actually pretending to be her Irish maid and saying, like, nope, she's not here, and doing it with a brogue, which I won't attempt because I don't do accents. But yeah, so I mean, I'm sure that was stressful too.
When it's all said and done, which iteration is now your favorite?
Well, I will, before I make that decision, I want to briefly just tell you about this book I read. Called Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy, a graphic novel by Ray Terciero and Brie Indigo. And I also want to credit Gabrielle Rose Camacho, Ryan Toxin, Christina Quintero, and Cassie Gonzalez, who all contributed artwork to this really beautiful book. So it imagines Little Women now, set in a family that lives in New York, and the father is away serving in Iraq or Afghanistan. The mother is a nurse, and Aunt March comes around and helps out. Jo, they're all in high school, and they're also a family where the dad is Black and had Meg, and then he met the mom who had Jo. They get married and together have Beth and Amy. So they're a blended family. And the father's away at war when we start the book, and we get like action, and then interspersed with the plot is actual emails that all the girls are sending to the dad. That part I probably would have cut because it was a little bit too much like forced exposition of like, and Dad, you remember how you married Mom after you had me with my mom and she died and so on. It's like, I would never write an email to my dad that's like, remember how I'm your daughter and you know, this and that. So that part I probably would have cut, but it is a really interesting book where like the Meg character really wants to be rich. Like she's basically like, we are in such dire financial straits here. Like we live in a 4th floor walk up. We have no space. We have no money. My mom has to work all the time. My dad's away. So she's like, I will do whatever I need to do to be rich. And then she gets a boyfriend, and at the end of the book, she actually chooses to dump him because even though he's rich and wants to marry her, she's like, actually, I think I want to go to law school. Aww. And I'm ruining this book, but it's like, I kind of need to get your response to this. So that's how they kind of reimagine Meg. Jo is a writer, also gay, and is coming to terms with that throughout the book. So her like we get some of her diary entries where she's like, I have a secret I can't tell, this and that. And there's a Laurie character who's also in love with her, who's like a neighbor, and she has to turn him down when he kisses her. Beth does not die in this book.
Love.
So Beth, it gets really tired and she's not feeling well, and you find out she has leukemia. And this is also happening at the same time that their father was injured by an explosion. So the mom has to go to Germany to be with him. He loses a leg. And then she has to come back and be with Beth in the hospital because she has leukemia. Lots going on here. And then so Jo shaves her head to make Beth feel better because Beth loses her hair. And they all shave their heads. And then Amy, is just basically... Amy is very annoying in this book. I'll just say that. She's very young in this book, depicted as very young and, kind of only thinking about herself, wants to be an artist. So she's kind of marginal. She doesn't really go on that much of a journey. By the end of the book, there's a Thanksgiving where Jo just stands up and is like, I'm gay. The dad comes back from the hospital and she's like, I need to tell everybody something right now. And they're with Laurie and his grandfather. And she's like, I am gay. And Laurie and the grandfather are inch from the room and are like, we're going to give you guys a minute to deal with this. And Aunt March runs away. And the closing scene of the book is Aunt March has been dodging everyone and Jo goes there. And she's like, you hit close to home, Jo.
Oh my God.
And she's
finally.
Basically I'm gay. End scene.
I do feel like that's worth it, even if it's just to get at the Aunt March truth.
Yeah. In a sense, it's she probably reminded Jo a little bit too much of herself. And the fact that Jo wasn't going to make the choice she made to marry Rich and deal with it was probably too antagonizing, is my guess.
I like it.
So I enjoyed it. I encourage people to check it out. I love the artwork. I love how inclusive it is. And I like that Jo is explicitly queer because in my head that's how it is. So it's nice to see it on the page. So yeah, definitely check that out. But of all these adaptations, of everything else, and where do you come down on all of this? Also, just a quick piece of trivia. People I read when the latest movie came out were critical that a lot of the cast was British. Did you know the first film adaptation of Little Women was British?
I did not.
Yes. Hold on. I have a million screens open right now. Excuse me. This is a mess. Where is it? Oh, God. Okay, my Susan Cheever search really messed with me. Okay, in 1917, there was a British silent film starring Ruby Miller as Jo. I don't know who that is, but it was the first ever adaptation of Little Women on the big screen. It is considered lost.
Wow.
We don't have that. There was an American version in 1918, which was shot in and around Alcott's home in Concord. Be interested to see that.
I would too.
The next one is 1933 with Katharine Hepburn. Wild. I don't know.
See, I also feel a particular bias. I feel like the New Englandness of this story came through the screen on the 2019 version in a way it didn't in 94.
Interesting. I wonder why that is.
I think I'm just going to be honest, I think that this film was a lot fewer sets and more scenes in historic properties. There's a great Boston.com article of all the places where they were. Yeah. When they're on the beach, that's actually the Crane Beach adjacent to the Crane Estate in Ipswich. It feels real. That's where they actually would have gone, and it made a big difference for me.
Yeah, I think it was gorgeous. All the locations were beautiful. And I also think the material culture of the film is really New England-y of that time, too.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that because you own some of it now. No big deal.
No, but, between Lawrence, Harvard, Concord, Groton, all these locations, all really within the heart of Concord, Massachusetts, that felt very accurate. Even the whole color palette of the film felt very much like seasons in New England in a way that other films maybe haven't.
Yeah, I agree with that. Totally.
I'm still a Beth, but it's harder now.
I was going to ask, how are you at it? Where are you at with this?
I think I'm in 1994 Beth.
Okay.
And I think I'm a 2020 Marmee.
Okay. You're angry all the time?
No, I feel like I connected to Marmee in this film in a way that was very unexpected for me, and I think that performance was a genuine surprise how much I was taken with it.
I agree with that. I don't really know that it changed things for me. It didn't really make me think where do I fit into this book, because I feel it's probably the same. I still identify with Jo, but I do appreciate the scene where she says I'm lonely, like for me that made me flash back to like earlier parts in my 20s in a big way, where it's like balancing your personal happiness, wanting to connect with people, but also your professional like drive and ambition, and not wanting to quiet one to satisfy the other. So I think there's so much of that it kind of works as a life cycle story. I think it's so much associated with young girls and kind of imagining what your life will be. And this film actually, I think, did a really powerful thing of showing that the story can also be meaningful to people further along in their life course who just maybe want to reevaluate kind of how they got where they are and where they want to keep going. So I think that's where the editing structure was really beautiful, and that it kind of allows for a revision that opens it up or emphasizes that it's not just for little girls, or, you know, in the same way that people think American Girl is for young girls, like imagining what their lives will be about. We could also say rereading those books now is also a way of kind of checking in with yourself about who you thought you would be as an adult and what your life would be about and what you want it to be about now and going forward.
Do you think if Addie Walker heard Bronson Alcott speak, she would be impressed?
I'm guessing not. Like, I don't think she would give him love cookies. I wouldn't.
No. Yeah, I think a lot of people decline to give him love cookies.
Well, he shouldn't take them, right? Because wasn't his whole Fruitlands thing like, I'm only going to eat things that grow, that are not rooted because they grow up from hell? So, like, you couldn't have potatoes, right?
That I don't recall, but I know for certain that they did not have sugar because of its connection to the slave trade. They only had like maple sugar.
Right.
So like that aspect of the cookie is out. I think she would have heard him and his cohort talk for about a half hour and been like,
yeah,
Mom and I have places to go.
I'd rather eat ice cream and sell it at a great upcharge to
Yeah.
Thoreau. Yeah, I don't think she would be having it at all.
No.
Full stop. Wow. We've really gone on a journey here. Is there anything else you want to say about Louisa May Alcott, Bronson, Brittany?
I do want to foreshadow where we're heading next in the month of April. Like, do I dare?
I think you kind of have to. I'm very excited about this.
I want to give a few guesses. Like, our next story will be Unsinkable.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to see what goes down.
I think it might be like a little bit icy at times. Okay, we're doing the Dear America about the Titanic. It's a dream come true.
It's a real dream come true. We will be marking that anniversary by reading the Dear America Titanic book. I have not read it since, you know, I was younger, probably the same height. So I can't wait to see where we go with this. I don't know that I can bring myself to revisit the film, you know, to also prepare.
No. There's no need for that. No.
I don't think I can like make myself go there. I mean, I wonder if Billy Zane just watches that film and weeps for his hair. Like, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that film is gonna like stay where it sits. It's like, I don't need to hear like, draw me like one of your French girls. Like, it's good.
That film is longer than it took the actual boat to sink.
I know.
And I know it's like bringing us presentations of multiple days, so it's maybe not a fair comparison, but it's like, that means something to me.
Our friend Winnie, as a joke, teased a Titanic conspiracy that I am going to spend the next month researching in preparation for this episode.
Winnie, sweet angel Winnie, thank you for inspiring us. Like, you know, we'll be bringing you her conspiracy theories. We'll be bringing you our own, possibly some history, possibly some pop culture. We really can't wait. And if you like these episodes, tell a friend. Thank you for listening. We really do so appreciate you going on this journey with us. Allison, where can people find you to share Titanic conspiracies, Britney Spears intel, anything?
People can find me at Allison Horrocks, and that is my Twitter handle, my Instagram handle. Still the only me so far. So type it in, you'll find me. 2 L's and 2 R's. Where can they find you?
So if you have any intel on where we might find seltzer in these trying times, you know, my personal reserve is going down, like the Titanic, you might say. And I'm, you know, anticipating a tragedy in my own life if I'm without it. So please reach out to me on Instagram at Mimi Mahoney and at Twitter at Mary Mahoney123. Would love to know your preferred brands, flavors. I have very strong feelings about this. tell me where you can get it in the COVID-19 of it all. And, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much for listening and supporting the show.